I thought we could do a bit of a thought exercise, a bit of a project.
Yes.
And how many games of Super Rugby did you play?
100 odd.
A veteran of 100 odd Super Rugby games. You know the standard, you know the quality, and you know how hard it is to then crack that next level, the international scene. And the era that you played in, well, not even arguably, there was more depth then than there is now. Let's put it that way. I'm going to throw a couple of names at you, and I'd like you to let us know here at SENZ whether they would be the sort of quality that would be starting for the Wallabies currently.
Okay.
So I'll lob a couple out, and we'll start with a couple of half volleys.
Yes.
And you might notice that these names I'm about to throw out have one thing in common, and we'll work out, and we'll see where Australian rugby's at this way. We'll work it backwards. So
Okay.
if I said to you, Dalton Papali'i,
Yes.
would he be starting for the Wallabies?
Yeah, I think you would. I mean, obviously they got Hooper there, but I think Dalton, you'd find room to have Dalton in your loose forward show without a shadow of doubt.
What about a guy like Patrick Tuipulotu
Oh, without a shadow. He'd definitely be starting.
in the engine room there?
In the engine room there, I think it's been for a good few years, I guess, an issue for the Wallabies. So a guy with that much experience, that much size, yeah, I think Big Paddy would, if he was born in Sydney, he would definitely be a Wallaby.
Brad Weber?
Oh, Brad Weber starts for most teams that I'm coaching. So yes, he'd be starting.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to continue moving down the country if you don't mind. I think this is a great thought experiment. I mean, we can dissect what this all means in just a wee bit. Now, yeah, this is where it gets a little bit sketchy, but not really. A guy like Ethan de Groot is, without a shadow of a doubt. So that's a layup.
Yep.
What about? And I can't move away from loose forwards. But what about a guy like Billy Harmon?
Well, he'd be in straight competition with Hooper, wouldn't he?
Yeah, it's too congested. You're right.
Yep. They do have a relative depth in the loose forwards, I do believe. Probably still missing an absolute number 6 lock-in, like they've had in yesteryear. But with Hooper and Rob Vittini, they've got the nucleus there.
So, Leicester-fying Anuku?
So I'm number one. I'm paid up number one fan club member of Big Leicester. When you look at their backs, you would find a spot for him 100%. And that obviously Karevi at his best is probably the best centre in the world. So you wouldn't bump him out of centre or out of the midfield. But Leicester, from what he does at Super Rugby, you'd have to have a starting spot for him.
Damien McKenzie?
Oh, yeah. He would, well, to be fair, either 10 or 15.
So, Beav, those are fringe All Blacks.
Yeah.
And with about 90% success rate there, you don't have to think too hard about whether they're going to start for the Wallabies. Now, you try to then tell me that Dave Rennie was the one that wasn't making it work.
Yeah, and I think that's been a little bit lost in all of the hype, the hoopla that we've obviously said. Well, look, what's he working with? What we're saying is, I can't imagine Dave Rennie and the echelon coach that he is, where he sits, that he's the reason. And what else? Therefore, you take another step back. What have Australia done all this for? Because surely they don't believe, Marinos and is it McLennan? Surely they don't believe, it's clearly the coaching. It's clearly the coaching. The boys haven't gone to him and said, hey, we need to get rid of this guy from across the ditch. He's a terrible coach. That has not happened. It can't have happened. So therefore, what have they done this for? Obviously, Eddie's Australian. He became on the market. Sure, sign him up for after the next World Cup. But it's just the most bizarre thing. unless you are literally just wanting your game to be on the front page or back page of the Herald in Sydney on in January, which it now is.
So we know what it's not about, and I completely agree. And I think your sentiment all week has been bang on, Beef. It's not about Dave Rennie. This isn't a conversation about Dave Rennie.
No,
it never has been. Because that little thought experiment there shows you what they're working with. And by the way, the All Blacks didn't have a flash year last year, and they were fringe All Blacks players. So
yes.
that tells you what you need to know there. But on the productivity side of it, when you watch the Wallabies and when you think about the Wallabies and the way they play their rugby, even with Dave Rennie and in recent yesteryear, what can they do to actually get better?
I think I made the point talking to the Aussie guys yesterday, is a couple of years ago, what was the stat? They won 2 from 25. And then last, as far as against Kiwi super teams, and then maybe this year they won 7 or 8, or, something like that. And it was a slight improvement. There's a massive belief issue to get over. Because when games go down to the last 10 minutes and 5 minutes, if you didn't go into this game genuinely thinking you believe, or it hasn't washed over you in the previous 70 minutes that, hang on, we will beat these guys today, then you can almost see it in their eyes that it's been a gallant sort of performance, but we're not just going to quite make it. And so I think there's a whole generation of probably Aussie footballers that, and we're just talking about the All Blacks here, playing the All Blacks, that at times to actually believe that they're going to get the job done. And, that's something you've got to get over.
So can you, that is less tangible, and that makes me wonder, can you coach a little bit of belief with a guy like Eddie Jones, who is all bravado?
Well, he's going to have the boys at times thinking they're 10 foot tall and that, but he's also a very hard taskmaster. And if these guys have got any sort of confidence issue, then it's going to be sort of tested with Eddie, because he's going to talk to them different than Ren's talked to them. The boys yesterday on the Aussie show said, was Dave Rennie just too nice? And I was like, well, the Dave Rennie I know, and the Dave Rennie's reputation in New Zealand is certainly that not of all marshmallows and fluffy box sort of thing. He is a very hard, demanding coach, but he just does it in a different way than I'd imagine Eddie's very confrontational, aggressive nature would be. There's no soft aspect to Dave Rennie's coaching, let me tell you that.
And to put a staple in this, Beef, on the field, away from the coach's box, more than anything, positionally, what do the Wallabies need if they want to succeed?
Well, up front, I guess has been a bit of an issue. The scrum has certainly seemed to have turned around. Well, being a lot more competitive when you see them how they handled that Northern Hemisphere tour at times. But they've also got to settle on what they're doing at 10. So Bernard Foley and Quade Cooper, I think between the two of them will make up their World Cup 10. Because literally, what else are they going to go to? Young Lolliser, see, he was the future, but has he been burnt too many times? And is he going to survive under Eddie?
Beav, it's like a young racehorse. You just don't want them being flogged. You can't have them hitting the line with multiple horses running in front of them, and it just breaks their soul. It breaks their spirit, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So I think, yep, they're gonna go with Bernard or Quade, and they've been great players, and absolutely you could do a hell of a lot worse than those two. But the fact is, the only thing that would worry me about those two, if you're Australian rugby, is one of them's coming from Japanese second division in Quade, and then one of them will be coming from Japanese top league, and that's all good and well. And I know we all say, it's an improving game out there, blah blah blah. You all say that when you're there. The reality is, it is a long way off Super Rugby, and it's an even longer way off Test match rugby. So that's not easy for those boys to slot straight back in from there into Test match footy for the Wallabies, and it's such a position, Louis.